And we are here for an exciting race in the Hambleden Pairs Challenge Cup. Another one of the relatively new women's events added to the program, in for 3 years now. Of course, it is the Chinese national rowing team from China, Lin and Ju, and from New Zealand, from Wairiki Rowing Club, New Zealand, of course, the national women's pair of Grace Prendergast and K.L,
who are the fastest on paper ever in this particular boat class. So, you know, an incredible combination. They've already raced today in the women's 8 in the Remnant and won that. So, you know, to come up and do another race in a different event is challenging. So it'd be interesting to see how the recovery's gone from that to being able to come out again and race over the Henley course again twice in one day.
Because they've only had 4 hours between the races, and having the 8 first, I think, is particularly brutal because it's so hard and it's so fast, and it wasn't an easy race by any stretch. So,
if you were going to do 2 events like that, how would you prefer to do it?
I would definitely prefer to do the pair first.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, the eight is just so explosive, and I mean, over my time, I doubled up in both at World Cups and things like that, and I always used to think, when I did the 8, thank goodness the pair was out of the way, because the 8 just takes it out of you. The Chinese just struggling with their steering. They're going to have to move here, or they're going to hit that Kiwi pair. So another tactic for the Chinese here would be to put them under pressure as soon as possible again, because they are the fastest crew, the Kiwi crew in the world. Won this event in 2017. You know, pretty dominant in this event. And they've already done 1 race, so as a kind of crew coming up against them, you want them to ask questions of their fitness and how their recovery's gone in those kind of really grueling parts of the race. Absolutely, you'd be wanting to put them under pressure early, make them work for it. And it seems that the Chinese went out to do that, but unfortunately that steering correction they've made has really wiped some speed off. And for those of you watching us who don't understand how that works, basically in the coxless boats, for the most part, but particularly in the pair, you have a rudder which one of the athletes will have attached to their foot, either the stroke seat or the bow seat. And every time you use that rudder, it's like putting a brake on the boat. It does slow it down, and that's why typically when we talk about the steering corrections, we also talk about the impact that has on their boat speed, and it generally has a very obvious impact, particularly in a slow-moving boat like the pair. So we can see now the Kiwis trying to establish an early race lead. They're going to really start to suffer in the second half of this race after the monumental effort of winning the women's 8 earlier in the day.
Which was a big race as well. Like, for them to take down the British 8 who were on home water, that was a big grudge match going on there, and that would have taken a lot out of them to do that, because on paper that probably wasn't the form guide going into it. So that was a bit of a shock, I think, to the crowd or the spectators here. That was something they would not expect it.
Yeah, not at all. Well, I'm really impressed by how these Kiwi women have gone out to attack this race. I think if I were them, I'd probably be doing something similar, trying to start fast, use that momentum out of the blocks to establish a lead, and then just maybe have a breather and try and control the race from the front. You wouldn't want to be in a position where you're racing from behind after what they've done. Or
you wouldn't want to be in a position where you're going to have to sprint at the end, because that deadness in your muscles from the race you've previously done, you can't eradicate that. It's still going to be kind of some wear and tear in there, and some of those bullets you'd like to use if you had a one-off race. So it'd be interesting to see how much they try and get, so to give them that buffer, so they don't have to go crazy at the end and go through the gears.
And are they making history today? Will this be the first time that a female crew has won 2 trophies at the one Henley Regatta? I can't think that would have happened before, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But that would be very...
I think you might be wrong, because I know you can't do a sweep event and a sculling event. You can only stick to one discipline. So yeah, that could be true actually, because obviously the new events came in a couple of years ago. So I'd be very surprised if somebody's managed to do a double in the same regatta.
Absolutely. So potentially history being made here by the Kiwi women winning the women's 8 earlier in the day. Here they are in the women's pair, currently leading the pair from China.
And it'd be interesting, obviously, they've been in the 8 earlier on today, where the girls they race in that were probably happier them doing the 8 first, because they've got their race out of the way. And then if you want to play gains by going to another event, go and do that in your own time, sort of thing. I don't know if it works like that, but just, you know.
I think you're probably right in terms of the 7 other women that were in the 8. Probably these 2 are hoping it was the other way around, and perhaps the rest of the crew are very happy with how it's shaken out. But either way, it looks like they're potentially going to do the double here.
Such a class outfit.
Absolutely, absolutely. These 2 talented young women really bursting onto the scene. In 2014, I think, was their first senior A team. From memory, I'm pulling this from memory. I think they were in the women's 4 in Amsterdam that year. So really just exceptional standard of these 2 young women, Prendergast and Gowler. And good morning to those of you joining us from New Zealand. It's been a big day. And of course, your men's and women's 8s both winning here. So similar to what the Australians did last year, taking out the men's and the women's 8s, the Remnant and the Grand. And the Kiwis have done the same again this year. And that was particularly incredible race from the Kiwi men's 8 to defeat Great Britain. I don't think anyone saw that coming.
No one saw it. And to me, that's the worrying part at the moment. There's no consistency of what we have. We keep going up and down, and that's really unsettling as a crew, I'm sure. But amazing performance from the New Zealand team have come over, and they've, you know, on the British home water, they've been able to overcome them like the Aussies did last year. So really impressive, especially when they've only been in Europe for a couple of weeks, haven't they? They've been here long.
Yeah, that's right. And here we see one of 4 crews from China competing in finals today. This women's squad really has come on in leaps and bounds over the last 2 years. Of course, we've referenced many times Sir Stephen Redgrave, the high performance director, I think in his 2nd year in that role in China, and Paul Thompson taking on the head coaching role as of this year, the famous Australian Olympic gold medal winning coach and GB coach for some 2 decades, I think.
Yeah, he was there for a long time, Paul. He came in the early 2000s. And I remember Marty Aitken was there, and then Paul came to join him, and then Marty left, and of course continued on to have much more success.
Yes, so certainly we will expect big things from the crews from China this year and next year leading into the Olympic Games, but it's all about these 2 women, Grace Prendergast and Kerry Gowler of New Zealand. They've won the women's 8 today. They're now going to back up and do the double in the women's pair. What a phenomenal performance here. Only 4 hours in between those 2 finals, and that was a tough row in that women's 8 final, so all credit to them. People were wondering, how would they be able to back up with such a short gap between the 2, but they are just dominant.
And I love that they'd have been so confident they could do this. Looking at the type of athletes they are, or kind of hearing of what the type of athletes they are, they'd have known they could have come here and this was possible to do 2 events and win both of them.
Yeah, well, I guess Mahe Drysdale had a similar goal in mind, entering the single and the 8, but unfortunately that journey in the scull ended early for him. But that taking probably, up the Grand today makes up for it.
That probably helped him, you know, getting out the single early. You know, that event is, you know, I know he was coming to win it another time, 7th time would have been amazing, but, you know, that event is so tough now, and he's getting on a bit. So going into the 8, he can use that experience much better than trying to be in the single, going up against some of the caliber of athletes we've had here this week.
As they come into the line now, it is Grace Prendergast in the bow seat, 27 years of age. Kerry Gowler in the stroke seat, 25 years of age. They're the world best time holders in the women's pair and 4. Winners now of the women's 8 and the women's pair at Henley. We think it's the first time that has ever happened. Well done to this class outfit from New Zealand, defeating China in the Hambleden Pairs Challenge Cup.
2 impressive young athletes there. They're going to dominate the event for a long, long time, I think, if they stay together. Just another day at the office for them.
They were really composed, weren't they? Holding that start speed out to try and control this race. They perhaps wouldn't have known what the Chinese would have had, what impact racing the 8 beforehand would have had on them, getting into a controlling position early, which then really allowed them to relax into their rhythm and just watch any challenge that might come from the Chinese, but getting better and better all the way down the course, staying long and loose, and they looked fantastic.
And also, you know, the girls they raced with early, the 7 of them would have been celebrating that win they had against the British 8. They've had to go into recovery mode and prepare again for another race. So that's really hard, but so impressive to be able to race like that again twice in one day and win.